रोशनी का कारवां।
This podcast is brought to you by Score Foundation.
ये है रोशनी, रोशनी, रोशनी का कारवां, रोशनी। Eyeway, ये है रोशनी का कारवां।
Hi, my name is George Abraham and welcome to Eyeway Conversations. My guest today is Sandeep Singh, who is an assistant professor at the Ambedkar University at New Delhi. He teaches English. Hi, Sandeep, welcome.
Hi, George. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You came to Delhi, you said 16 years ago, to probably do a post-graduation or an MPhil, and this was at JNU. Was JNU kind of welcoming to you as a visually impaired student?
JNU was welcoming, yes, because when I reached JNU, there were some seniors who were anticipating my arrival, so they were there. They took me in their custody. They took me to their room and they took care of me. They told me things that I needed to know, like certain things that I was not very conscious about in Mumbai. They told me, you can't say this, you can't do this. Like, you can't use slurs very easily here. You got to be careful about asking, where they come from and what their caste is. You can't ask anybody's caste. Cannot. Some of the things, that JNU taught me to be sensitive about, which I wasn't in Bombay, because in Mumbai, all of these things didn't matter to us. Neither did one ever say this. Like, there's some words that one was very used to using. They said, no, you shouldn't use this because it may hurt somebody. So all of these sensitivities I learned in JNU. So that way JNU is very welcoming, very, and I met people from so many parts of the country that I hadn't known. Like the Northeast was a complete, I was oblivious to the Northeastern part of our country until I came to JNU. Though there were a few Northeastern students in Mumbai, in my college, in my class, but one didn't interact with them because here you had Northeastern night, here you had Bihar night, here you had, Andhra night, and where you go there, you get food from Andhra, you get to meet people from that part of the state. So, that inclusivity was there. And disability, infrastructurally, JNU had its challenges. It is not very accessible in terms of infrastructure. But people were very, very welcoming. People were helpful. People were willing to sort of assist.
A lot of people, and even when I have visited JNU, one thing that strikes and stands out is the number of dogs and monkeys that are there.
Yeah.
You as a visually impaired person there, was it a challenge?
Oh, indeed. In fact, the dog menace was a big, big challenge because, approximately what we were told is that in an 1,100-acre campus, there are about 700 plus dogs, and we had a problem. We in fact also did a hunger strike to get the administration's attention to the dog menace and to kind of we were not seeking a complete removal. We were suggesting and we were willing to dialogue and say that make a space for them, like a canal in some part, because JNU had a lot of open spaces.
Yeah.
So from that they could have selected some part and where they could have allowed them to exist. But, the animal activists said, no, how would it be if we gave you that option? So they compared us with dogs, literally. They said, you are suggesting this for us. What if we suggest this for you? So that kind of debate, so we tried to dialogue with the animal lovers, the dog lovers of the campus many a times, but we always reached an impasse. So we then launched a struggle, tried to dialogue, and that administration was supportive. We realized the real-time threat to many of us who could not go to the dhabas to have tea on our own. We had to wait for our sighted counterparts to come and take us. So we realized that challenge, and that was the biggest challenge for us.
If you know of anyone with vision impairment who needs guidance on living life with blindness, please share the Eyeway National Toll-Free Helpline number 1-800-5320-469. The number is 1-800-5320-469.
your name suggests that you are not originally from Bombay. You probably came there from somewhere else, probably somewhere in the north. And the other thing I want to know is that how come you got interested in English?
Yeah. So, well, to talk about my roots, I am from UP. There's a village called Belhata in near Jaunpur district, and
Yeah.
to the nearest railway station to get to it is Varanasi.
Yeah.
So I'm from there. My father moved to Bombay in the summer of 1969, and that's how he came to Bombay. And then he slowly made his career there, and then he got married in Bombay. So my mother was already in Bombay, before that, because her entire family was settled in Bombay, because my mother's father was a Hindi teacher in one of the oldest school of Mumbai, the Hindi high school at Ghatkopar. So my parents got married in 1973 in Bombay, and then my brother came along, then my sister, and then I. So we were all born in Bombay, in Thane, in fact, not in Bombay, Thane, which is an adjacent district to Mumbai. So I actually had a very interesting beginning into learning English. When I was in 8th standard, we had our senior who didn't have a family of his own. So he used to stay in a school and used to study in Jai Hind College. You may have heard of, George, probably Akhtar Hussain, who was an orphan and was staying in our school and used to study in college. And because he hadn't sort of started his career, so he was staying in our school. So I used to hear him speak English, and he, at a couple of occasions, our principal used to make him give speeches in English for our trustees and our guests. So I always think, how eloquently he speaks. I also want to speak like him someday. And in fact, he was our dormitory in charge. So I told him, that someday I also want to speak like you, the way you speak English so well and so eloquently. They said, yeah. So then he gave me a few tips, that listen to BBC on radio, listen to cricket commentary on radio. And until then, I used to listen to Marathi commentary, because I used to like some of the Marathi commentators, and I used to listen to Hindi commentary. And I automatically, it was like kind of, a kind of a moment, eureka moment for me. And I said, yeah, why not? And I actually started doing that, and it just helped. So what I used to do, George, is that after a cricket match is over, and when we are walking back to our room, or when you're going to the washroom, just start repeating the commentary that you have heard on the radio, English commentary. So I used to just talk to myself, like imagining like I'm Tony Gregg, I'm Ravi Shastri, and how I would be saying those same words. And like that, words just stayed in one's memory. And they just sort of started making sense to my ears. Like, okay, this is how it sounds right.
You also did mention cricket in while you were talking about how you picked up
Yes.
the language. It's a stupid question to ask to an Indian, especially from Mumbai, but still, how did you get interested in cricket?
Well, that's the one sport that I understood the most. I mean, 1996 World Cup is my beginning into watching cricket. I think that's the time that and my brother used to talk to me a lot about cricket, and my brother used to play cricket, for which he used to get beaten by my parents, my father, for it. That he used to miss school and miss his tuitions and go play cricket. So and he used to take me along, so that he doesn't get beaten. He doesn't get beaten by my father on the way, because if I'm there, he has to take care of me. So how
Yeah.
will he beat him?
Yeah.
So my brother was quite smart. So he used to take me to the ground and make me sit behind the stumps. And you select, I'll tell you how many runs I have ran and how many runs I've hit. You do the scoring for me. So I'm
Right.
like, okay. So that was my beginning. So I used to sit behind the keeper and used to score runs for my brother and for their team. So I thought, okay, this is simple. I understand. There's not much to know. And then 1996 World Cup, when I began, is my beginning into actually watching cricket and listening to cricket.
You were telling me that the first 9, 10 years of your early days, you were at home.
Yeah.
So, what actually happened during those early days, and then what prompted your parents to put you into a school?
Yeah, so George, before I joined Happy Home and School for the Blind, my parents tried a couple of usual schools for me, nearby schools where my siblings were going, and where so first they started me with an English medium school where my sister and my brother were going. So they realized in a week's time that I wasn't looking at the blackboard. I wasn't really being able to read the blackboard, even sitting in the front row. And the teacher called my parents and said that, he's not being able to concentrate. He's not being able to read the board. He's sleeping in class. So then my parents were very disheartened, and then they took me out of the school. And then they thought maybe, in a Hindi school, I'll be better off. I don't know what sensibility they had while they thought that. And then they started sending me with another neighbor of ours to a Hindi medium school. There also, in a week's time, the similar issues came up, and then my parents were called and they were told. And then after that, they didn't know what to do. So they tried Hindi medium, they tried English medium. They knew the Marathi medium school would be the same story, so they didn't even try. So after that, I was pretty much at home. And I remember I used to go with my neighbor. I had a neighbor who used to be a very religious person. So she would take me to all the Satyanarayan pujas and all the temple hopping that she would go to. She would take me. And my mother was very happy to send me, thinking that, okay, at least he'll go out, he'll be able to do something, if religious way is his way forward, so be it. So they didn't know anything really, because both my parents are not very educated. And because of that, and we are talking about 1980s. Even if anyone was educated, there was very little to be educated about disability and blindness and possibilities. So,
Yeah.
and being in Thane, again, resources were not that many. So basically, the turning point in my life came, and those are the times when, my parents were constantly told at social gatherings of family, or when relatives would come home, that, how, and they would say it very, very, loudly and openly, me sitting right there, telling them that, how now your life is ruined. Now you have to ensure that this boy passes before you do, because who will take care of him after you are gone, and so on and so on. Then they're like, oh, you should have done your abortion in time, considered that, because there was a situation where my mother knew, because of she was when she was expecting me, she had fallen ill, and the injection that the doctor gave also had impacted her. She had jaundice basically, and
Yeah.
that jaundice resulted in an infection because she was wrongly misdiagnosed and treated. The doctor had informed that there may be some disability or deformity that your child may have. And my father was the opinion that they reconsider, but my mother was very, very clear that whatever it is, I'm not going to abort. I'm going to let it come, and we'll take it on from there. So my mother was also for that chastised that you should have listened to him or whatever. And all of these things, I'm listening. I'm there. And it's only like now when I reflect back, when I talk about my life, early life, I think, how some of these things you hear, but you don't know how to react at that time, because I was just 4, 5 years, 6 years old. So the turning point came in the last shot that my parents were giving of my eye operation. So I was operated at the Banaji Eye Hospital in VT, CST, which has now become.
Yeah.
And there was a Parsi doctor. There were a group of 3 Parsi eye specialists who were operating on me. And after a 2.5-hour long operation they did on my eye, they realized that this operation is not going to work, because my retina was like, how you sort of scramble a piece of paper and throw it in the dustbin. My
Right.
retina had pretty much become that. So they tried to do something with it, but they did not succeed. So they called my dad and they said, Mr. Singh, I am telling you that don't go to any Oja, any Baba or any temple. I'm writing a name of a school. Please take him there and get him admitted there, and don't do any hospital hopping, no temple hopping. And my father said, okay. But then also my father sat on it thinking, school, what will he do? And he told him that it's a residential school. So they had their reservations of me going to any other school, because they thought, how will I do my basic things, which, I mean, they did teach me those things, but they were still not sure,
Yeah.
So, but then one fine day, I think my father decided that, let me take him and give it a shot. And that's how we went to that school. And that was the first time that my dad was also visiting that part of Bombay. Until then, we never had gone there. So when he went there, when he saw the school running, and when he met Meher Banaji, who was the principal then, so he felt that maybe this is my calling. And against my mother, who was very, very against it, thinking, no, this is too far. What if something happens to him? How are we going to take care of that? And how will we be able to make it so soon? But the principal then told my mother, that by taking extra care of him, you'll spoil him more. Then he'll not, then you'll have to take care of him even when he's 30, 40. But if you leave him now here, he'll probably become someone who will take care of you when you're in 70s and 80s. And I think that's what stayed with my parents, and they decided that they will put me. And then she said, that if he drops a glass of water at home, first time you won't scold him, second time you won't scold him, the third time you will feel irritated because you have to clean. But here we will teach them how not to do that, which you will not be able to teach. Some of these, very sound piece of advice, I would say, that Meher Banaji then managed to give my parents, and they took to it.
To support our work with the blind and visually impaired, you can visit the donate page on our website www.scorefoundation.org.in. Please note www.scorefoundation.org.in.
Well, you started school probably a little late, but you've traveled far. You've come to Delhi, you've done your MPhil, and now you're working on your PhD. And then you ended up teaching at one of the top colleges of the country at St. Stephen's. What was your experience there like? And teaching a bunch of students, at 19 and 18-year-olds could sometimes become a nightmare.
Oh yeah, the first 1 month was indeed a nightmare, because I had never imagined going to Stephens as a teacher. I mean, one's aspiration, it is always to be there as a student, right? Yeah. And my first opening into teaching career was St. Stephen's College. So, I knew what that institution was all about, and, the illustrious college that it is. And I had difficulties because, I didn't know how to sort of exert authority as a teacher. I didn't know how to kind of grasp their attention to begin with. So I had my difficulties, and I must say, when the going is tough, it doesn't get any easier. So, I had moments where students also didn't support me in my effort so I had difficult times. In fact, I many times thought of quitting and taking, I thought maybe I'm not made for teaching. But then my HOD then, Karen used to be someone, who's still an HOD there. Well, she gave me a lot of confidence. She said, we've all gone through this. We've all been unsettled by our students, and this will happen. But if you give up now, you'll never be able to pick it up. So stay with it, stick to it, and let them do what they're doing. You also do what you know best. And she told me, you remember this, that no matter what they say, more than them. So never ever think that they know more than you. You do know more than them. And it is just how you communicate, how you ensure that they understand that, because, so I said, all right, let me try. So I tried, and then slowly, I managed to kind of gain their confidence and become someone who they could entrust me with their, learning. And it took me a month or about 40 days to get there. And I had quite a few difficult moments then, but I somehow managed to, overcome. And once I realized that this is the way, because, I used to find preparation time very little because I was not from DU. And DU syllabus is nothing like what one learns in Mumbai. Mumbai English literature syllabus is way too simpler in comparison to Delhi University syllabus. It is Delhi University syllabus is quite intense, quite literature driven. Where in Bombay, you do alongside literature, also only in your final year that you do all 6 papers of English literature. Where I figured out in Delhi University, an honors student from year 1 does all literary papers only. So the syllabus was also very tough for me to kind of, come around and sort of make sense of in a sense that to be able to read, to be able to grasp, and then to be able to communicate that to students. That kind of became a little challenge. I used to stay awake most of the night, and then in class I used to blank out at many occasions because I hadn't slept enough. And then students used to think that probably, oh, he's just forgotten what he had to say. So those moments have happened, but they have made me, I assume, a better teacher now that I know teaching requires preparation. Teaching requires you to read more than your students are probably reading or would be reading. So those things I learned over time.
And how different or how alike was your experiences and even current experiences at Ambedkar University at Delhi?
When I joined Ambedkar, I mostly got first generation learners, and I then got people who were second generation learners, but not studied in English medium schooling. They come from Hindi medium school, and so for me, Ambedkar was like a completely different kettle of fish where I had to probably unlearn a few things, and I had to become more open and more sort of liberal in my classes, rather than the kind of strictness that one was used to in Stevens, about grading, about anticipation, about what to expect out of students. So that unlearning I had to do when I came to Ambedkar, because I wasn't, and I was told that, and I was told at the interview by Professor Menon that, we are a children of lesser God. Ambedkar University, that's how he described. He said, those who don't get into DU come to us. So you can imagine the crowd we get. So you'll have to, pace yourself accordingly. So that adjustment I had to make, but it wasn't very difficult an adjustment, because in Ambedkar, I thought students were more open about their background and their difficulties and their challenges than that of Stevens. In Stevens, even if people had, students had challenges and students had difficulties, the peer pressure was such that nobody ever spoke that eloquently or that openly in Stevens. So that was very, welcoming at Ambedkar, I found.
Sandeep, you are a family man now. You are married, you have a daughter. How has that added to your life?
Well, I've been married for now 10 years. Just recently, I had my wedding anniversary, so we become 10 years old in the marriage. But it is new because every day, you're learning in your marriage, you're learning in your family, you're learning in your, managing of the home. I met my wife Karuna in JNU. We were both MA classmates, and then, we were very good friends. We were very, very close friends. And that friendship sort of turned into us falling in love, when she, sort of realizing that, all the aspirations that any woman can have in a man who could be able are also available and are very well present in a disabled man. So I guess, and everybody has to make those compromises, either abled or disabled. So I guess she made those, and that's how everything fell in place. And we have an 8-year-old who's also someone who I learn every day. She learns from me. So she very early in life realized that, Papa can't reach out to things by sight. So she realized, and she used to, show everything by bringing it to me and giving it to me in my hand. And she's also someone who's, brought up with many of my friends constantly visiting home. So now the first thing that she does, if ever anyone comes abled or disabled, sighted or blind, she ensures that she gives them a tour of the house, because she thinks it's necessary. No matter whether you can see or you can't, you need to know the lay of the land to be able to be independent. So she picked up very early, because she used to see me do that to all my blind friends when they used to visit me. So that way she picks up. She's a very quick learner, and sometimes she'll also humor me out with my sight, which also, again, like she'll ask me to catch her, and then she'll just not run and remain there. So she has those moments as well.
So, are there anything that you kind of any specific things that you do to kind of relieve yourself of stress?
Yeah, so basically, I like reading, because something that my academia also gives me. So when I have to distress, when I have to not feel that I'm carrying the burden of the world, I do some light reading. So I'll read some novels that are nowhere related to my work. I would also read some books around travel. So I like traveling. So I read books around travel. I read experiences of travel because that tells you what to look out for when you're traveling. So I do that. I listen to music. I like ghazals. I like old Bollywood songs. I like doing that. And I like making friends and meeting new people, going to new places, trying out food. Like I used to be very, very limited in my trying of cuisines, but now I realize that I love doing that. So whenever there is a new cafe that somebody tells me has opened up or a new restaurant that has opened up, I am more than willing to go and try it out.
So on that amazing note, Sandeep, thank you very much for finding the time to speak with me. And
George, it's always a pleasure.
Eyeway, ये है रोशनी का कारवां.
This podcast was brought to you by Score Foundation.
ये है रोशनी, रोशनी, रोशनी का कारवां.